This episode is brought to you by my patrons on Patreon. For exclusive content and to help shape future episodes, go to patreon.com/Azriel and subscribe. Welcome to This Old Camera. I'm your host, Azriel Knight, and today I'm showing you the Kodak Vigilant 6-20. In the 1940s, they called it a lot of Kodak for the money. The Kodak Vigilant 6-20 was a medium format folding camera manufactured from 1939 to 1949 and featured full manual control, a stepless aperture, and 2 viewfinders. This camera and others like it were folding cameras designed to go into your pocket, a camera you can have with you anywhere you go. It took 8 photos per 6-20 roll, and if you don't know what 6-20 is, it's exactly the same as 120 except with a thinner spool. More on that later. The Vigilant came with an integrated fixed lens and, depending on the model, a maximum aperture of 4.5, 6.3, or 8.8. The 4.5 model also had a max shutter of 1/200. The 4.5 model was touted as the master of just about every picture you'll meet. The negatives produced are 6 by 9 centimeters. Here's an example next to a 35mm. Kodak claimed later in production that Vigilants were the result of valuable new developments in mechanics and optics achieved during the war years. They also promoted a 10-point support of the lens, which created, in their words, exceptional precision. I find this fascinating because in today's day and age, any incremental upgrade generally means an entirely new model. The Vigilant, however, went through several mechanical and optical upgrades over a decade and kept the same name. Accessories included the Kodak flash holder and a carrying case called the Kodak Snapsack. In this issue of Popular Photography released in 1951, a subscriber submits their photo of New York's Riverside Church, taken with the Vigilant 6-20. The Vigilant was in production the entire duration of World War II and a few years after. One can imagine that many family photos were taken for the soldiers away from home. From here we'll go over some operation basics. Then I'll show you some field test photos, and finally I'll show you where you can get one, how much it'll set you back, and if it's worth it. For this instruction, I'm using a late model produced between 1947 and 1949 with a maximum aperture of f8.8 and a 100mm Kodak lens. Yours may vary slightly depending on which model and when it was produced. To load a roll of film, slide this latch under the carrying handle and pull open the back. In a dimly lit room, place a roll of 6-20 film or a modified 120 spool inside, on the right end. Please note that a modified 120 spool needs to be sanded as well as clipped along the edges. The inside was meant to hold a metal spool with nothing but tension. Advancing with the plastic spool creates a little drag. Once the film is in place, break the seal and drag the film across to a second 6-20 spool on the left side. Place the lead into the slot. Close the back, open the frame indicator window, and slowly advance. First you'll see some arrows, then a number 1 indicating the first shot. Unfold the camera by pressing here and pulling the cover open until it snaps into place. If you want to use a filter, the lens takes a 31.5mm threading. Adjust the aperture by moving this lever on the bottom and shutter speed by moving the one on the top. Once you have your exposure, you can gauge your distance and adjust the focus ring to match. Frame your shot at waist level with this viewfinder, which can be positioned for horizontal or vertical photos. For a more refined composition, use the spring-loaded optical viewfinder at the top. Activate the shutter with the release on the top or under the waist level finder here. Advance the film by winding this knob and observing the indicator window until the next frame number appears. Always check and advance your frame number in a dimly lit area. In addition to the familiar bulb mode is a T mode. It's like bulb mode except you don't have to hold the release down. Instead you press the release once to open the shutter and again to close it. To attach a flash accessory, thread the bracket onto the tripod mount, then attach the trigger cord here by lightly pushing and twisting so it locks. Once the 8th exposure is taken, advance the film until you no longer see the backing paper in the frame window. Then wind some more to ensure the spool takes up the entire length of the roll. Closing these cameras can be tricky due to their age. Sometimes you need to apply more pressure than you think. The key is applying that pressure to the right place. In this case, you apply even pressure to these 2 spots. Hold firmly and push with your thumbs. Once closed, open the back same as before and remove the film. Your original spool can now be used as your next take-up. My field test for this camera was conducted during my 30 Days of Night Marathon on day 21. By viewer's choice, I used an expired roll of Kodak portrait film. Here are the results of that, including a couple not used in the original vlog, and if you want to see the full episode from that day, I'll leave a link in the description. Let's talk about some pros and cons. Pros: the negative size. It's enormous, and if you're not a fan of square images but want to try out medium format on the cheap, this may be the way to go. A sturdy design. The model spent a decade on the market, and many have survived the additional 7 decades since. Cons: even though the design is sturdy, the bellows were known for being subpar, and a max shutter of 1/100 or even 1/200 is very slow with today's high-speed film. Shooting sunny 16, even with ISO 100 film, will limit your options. To use the full gamut of settings, you'll want to shoot at 50 or even 25 ISO. These sell on eBay between $15 and $45 depending on the condition. This is one camera that will likely sell for less on eBay than a typical secondhand store. Folding cameras are by far the most overpriced I see at thrift and antique shops because the owner doesn't know what they have or they hope that the buyer doesn't. If you want to sell one and get the most cash for it possible, it should be tested. That means putting a roll of film through it in the daylight. Another way to do it is to place darkroom paper on the inside of the bellows and leave it out in some light, not hot light, for a short amount of time and see if anything develops from that. Overall, you'll enjoy this camera if you like antiques. I would also dare to say this is a great choice if you want to take a dip into medium format, but you don't want to invest a lot of money and you don't like the square format. Don't buy this camera if ergonomics are important to you. It's also a very heavy camera, weighing in at 1 pound 9 ounces. Also ask yourself if you like dealing with the 620 format. I know I would shoot with this camera more if it was a 120 camera. This camera shines when it's on a tripod with a cable release. It would also make a really great landscape camera. That's all for now. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, stay classic.